Unlimited thrill, limited time. The L-Certified by Lexus Spring Collection sales event has arrived, featuring an unlimited mileage L-Certified warranty and complimentary maintenance plan. L-Certified was named the best CPO program by US News and World Report.
For a limited time, get special offers on select pre-owned models.
See your South Florida Lexus dealer.
Not all customers will qualify. Offer ends May 31st. Time restrictions pursuant to L-Certified warranty and maintenance plan apply. See your Lexus dealer for details.
Tonight. All right! We're gonna have a TV party, all right! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight! All right! We'll pass out on the couch, all right! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't want to know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show is Arrow, brought to you by the CW. Specifically, we'll be talking about Season 6 tonight, but we're going to extend that conversation to deal with the entire run of Arrow at large, once again, on the CW. Who am I? I'm your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me to discuss all things Arrow on the CW is the opposite attorney on trial, the co-host of Long Road to Ruin, and a pretty cool Frood who really knows where his towel's at. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sean Comer, how do you do, sir?
Hey, everybody, I'm Sean. You're not, and I wish I could decide whether I love or I'm abjectly sick of this show.
Yeah, that's a good place to start with Arrow as any. So it hasn't aired yet. The raw audio is up on the Source Material podcast. The edited show will be up Monday on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. But I said at the time, I said, I really had no familiarity with the Green Arrow character. My first real exposure where I could say something intelligible about the character was on watching episodes of Justice League Unlimited. And outside of that, to me, Green Arrow was the Robin Hood version of Hawkeye, who I was more familiar with because I used to read West Coast Avengers. So what about you, my friend? What do you know? How do you know? What do you like? Who do you like about the Green Arrow comic book character?
Well, as the comics go, once upon a time, about all I really knew about him, based on a very few arcs that I had read and a few TV adaptations, was that he was largely a bit of a, I don't know, would caricature of revolutionary 60s liberalism be too harsh a term? Or is that, or am I perhaps overstating it just a little bit?
I don't know if caricature is fair. I think they were ascribing him a personality, and that's what they went with.
Yeah. He was kind of the antithesis of the old story Stan Lee likes to tell, that he invented the Tony Stark character largely to, as he put it, really wind the hippies up. Tony kind of being the avatar of everything that whole movement stood against. And Ollie kind of really crystallizing it and being DC's sort of heroic patron saint of those ideals, at least initially. As time wore on, the overt liberal tendencies were really, I think, tempered effectively, and he became more of an irrepressible, kind of irresponsible smartass more than anything else. he was kind of my main opinion of him comes from the fact that in places he was really viewed as not having been the best of influences on one of my favorite DC characters of all time, Hal Jordan.
Of which they shared a comic once upon a time.
They did. They have long kind of been best buddies. There's a story kind of bromance between those two. Hal's two best friends outside of his fellow Lantern Corps members have pretty much always been Barry Allen and Oliver Queen. So that was really kind of my entry point as the comics go. I know they've gone a long way toward adding layers of acrimony, tragedy, loss, guilt, what have you, to his character over the years. This particular version, the one that we're talking about, though, the best way I can really break it down, the way I've always heard it, was that circa 2012, Greg Berlanti, along with Mark Guggenheim and, hang on, I always forget the third guy's name, Andrew Kreisberg, all of them writers and producers, and I believe in the case of just the former two and maybe the latter, all were alumni of Smallville's 2006 to 2011 run. All had the notion that they actually had wanted to make a primetime live-action Batman series, to which Warner Brothers replied, well, DC/Warner Brothers replied, yeah, no. So
I have the memos from the minutes from that meeting. I believe the exact response was "Go to hell."
And keep in mind, of course, this was years before Gotham was so much as an insidious glint in anybody's eye. So instead, what Berlanti and company did was they took Oliver Queen / Green Arrow and pretty much made him their stand-in for Batman, basically copying the Caped Crusaders' tone, motifs, a number of characters, and even a few arcs here and there, and just kind of adapted them to, instead of Gotham, it's now Starling City. Instead of Bruce Wayne, it's, like I said, it's Oliver Queen. It's why for such a long time I simply referred to Arrow as not Batman. As a disclaimer, this is not a good jumping off point to immerse yourself in classic Green Arrow. Please do not make that mistake. There are tons of liberties taken with the source material. But in fact, it often seems to kind of struggle with kind of giving Oliver an identifiable personality that you don't look at and just say, oh, okay, so he's basically not Batman.
Batman with a bow.
Yeah, basically. That's the struggle of it. It comes from that phase, which a lot of people would say that DC has never let go of, in which they fully embraced just how popular Batman was, especially after the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, and just decided that instead of Marvel taking various genres and just kind of inserting superheroes and trying to give each of their properties its own separate distinguishable personality and character and ambiance, DC's solution was just, fuck it, we're just going to make everything Batman. People like it with this one character, so they'll probably gobble it up with a spoon and come back for seconds if we just do it with everybody. And we see how well that's worked out up to this point. that's not to say the show doesn't do anything well. It has a phenomenally strong ensemble cast, always has. It mines DC lore for some down-to-the-bone, deep-cut references and characters, and to such a point, in fact, that it's been the springboard for 4 more live-action hit DC spin-offs and the shockingly good animated online-exclusive Vixen series. But it isn't a show without its fault, as we're about to discuss. It's one wherein I started off watching the first season and not really being all that impressed, to going back and giving it another try and going, oh, okay, I think I see what you guys are trying to do here, and I can appreciate it a little bit more now. To after a few seasons, I went, oh, okay, now you're starting to go off the rails again, and you're once more just becoming not Batman. You're trying to make him Batman without explicitly calling him Batman and pissing Warner Brothers off. To now looking at the past 2 seasons and going, well, you're approaching the point of self-parody such that you're even lampshading your own redundant tropes, and yet you're actually somehow getting better?
Let me jump in here. I said this line when we talked about the Longbow Hunters on Monday. Again, the edited show coming up Monday on Source Material. I said, when I looked at what was available to watch, now I was late to come to The Flash, but I binge watched the entire first season on Netflix when that was available, right before season 2 was then made available on Netflix, and I fell in love with The Flash instantly. Supergirl I watched live on CBS, fell in love with that instantly, and then binge watched the first season of Legends, and Legends has risen to the top of the list. I think that's my personal favorite of all of them. I didn't give Arrow even a chance until 2 things happened. One, the initial crossover with all 4 series featuring the Dominators, and it got to the Arrow episode, and I had no clue what was happening. Like, zero understanding of that entire episode out of context.
Poor man.
Yeah, I'm like, what happened now? What boat was he on? So I wanted to gain a fuller understanding of that episode. So, but even then, it took cancer and and 2 hospitalizations for me to finally give Arrow a chance. I binge watched them while I was in the hospital last year. And look, I'm not going to say I fell in love with Arrow, but there were elements of it that I enjoyed. And much like Sean, I tend to ebb and flow. My interest in the show, that is, tends to ebb and flow depending on what they're doing. Introducing the Team Arrow characters of Wild Dog, Mr. Terrific, and the 3rd iteration of Black Canary, it's in some ways helped. I wasn't all that interested when I first saw them. I'm just like, who the hell's a Wild Dog? But I've enjoyed, and this is a good segue into this season. I've enjoyed the storyline of the breakup of the team and subsequent rejoining of Team Arrow. And I think, just when the show becomes too focused yet again on Oliver and his moroseness and his angst, it gets boring real quick. When there's more people and more dynamics at play, it becomes a much richer show. At least that's my takeaway.
It does and it doesn't, because, again, the other problem is, and this has been growing in frequency for the past few seasons, but they've been really, for some reason, been dialing the volume up to 11 on it in 5 and 6. When you have your own characters starting to acknowledge just how old some of this shit is getting, you may be reaching the shit or get off the pot point to really start setting the pieces of your show's end game in place.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about where we've come from and what brought us to season 6. So the initial run of Arrow was his father left him a book, and Oliver's mission was to start eliminating the fat cats of Star City that had colluded to take the city for all it was worth, and some of which had decided that that part of the city needed to be blown to smithereens. And that's more or less season 1. I don't remember what order these go in, so just bear with me here. But over the course of the next couple of seasons, they would introduce Damien Dark. They would introduce the League of Shadows, the League of Assassins, whichever iteration you want to go with. They would introduce the idea of him having a ward or a sidekick. First being Roy Harper, who was in the comics, and then his sister. Characters died, characters came back to life, then they died again. And then in the preceding season, we had a situation that where they, or again, and somebody brought this up in one of their reviews, they brought in Brother Blood, who turned out to be a different character. But they set up a thing where everybody in Oliver, everyone around Oliver was colluding against him. And and this one character had deep ties in the city and was controlling things and everything else, and everywhere Oliver turned, his match had been met, to the point where the entire cast ends up on an island and gets blown up.
Well,
kind of.
We'll get to my thoughts on that.
And I'm not even getting into the flashbacks. Those were their own arcs. But
fucking hell.
But that's sort of the short version of things, and which brings us to season 6, where they did it again, where they created a situation that repeats the same tropes from the previous season, which was the same thing now that I think about it, which is the same thing they did with Damien Dark. Damien Dark had his fingers in every pot and had control over the whole city, and he was using it to gain an advantage over Oliver. Then Brother Blood, who was Chase something or other, and now the same season you have first Caden James, who was then betrayed by.
Well, wait a sec. Well, let's not forget Prometheus, who actually was one of the better villains they've come up with.
And Prometheus ended up being Brother Blood, didn't he? They were both the same guy. If I remember correctly.
Okay, yes. They were. I'm sorry, you kept referring to him as
Brother Blood.
Even I'm having a hard time keeping some of them straight.
Yeah, he starts out the season as Brother Blood, and then he becomes Prometheus later on, and it's the same dude. It was the district attorney.
But the thing about it was, the thing that I really liked about that was, and this is a bit of a tangent, I'll try to keep it brief, and this was something that even Stephen Amell had mentioned being frustrated with in interviews. In the previous season, specifically season 4, Arrow went flying off the rails into the supernatural and fantastic, and got away from being a gritty kind of street level drama, kind of something.
Season 4 then has to be Damien Dark.
Yeah, exactly. Which is unfortunate, because Neil McDonough, that scenery-chewing bastard, was absolutely glorious. He was such a treat to watch. And yet, at the same time, it was also such a weak season. But I digress a little bit. Arrow was really starting to get off in that direction of being, if we're to make a Marvel comparison, perhaps a bit more, how do I want to put this? A bit more Avengers and not enough Daredevil. Not enough Daredevil, not enough Jessica Jones, not quite enough Luke Cage. It was really starting to get a little bit too crazy. Season 5 was a breath of fresh air because it took things back to Oliver matching wits with the son of one of the people that Oliver, in his early, more reckless days, actually killed in cold blood and waged a campaign of political and psychological warfare against him. It wasn't magic. It wasn't so much about superpowers or any of that. It was just about man versus man and man versus himself. Not so much man versus demigods. And man, oh man, was it refreshing. It had its problems, sure. Many of the same problems as this season. But one of the things I liked about season 6 is it carried on not only in terms of continuity, but in terms of spirit, everything that its predecessor did right.
Yeah, I think for me, one, it's a mixed bag. But two, the thing that I wanted to point out was that I think this season does it better than the preceding two seasons. I'll give it that. But again, it has a hard time divorcing itself from tropes it already used. So you talk about Chase having been this is a mission of revenge. He wants to bring Oliver low and destroy everything in his life out of revenge for Oliver killing his father. And Caden James is on a revenge plot for, and now he doesn't know this at the time, but he believes that Oliver was responsible for killing his son. Now it turns out he's being manipulated by the real season baddie, good old Alvarez from Oz, the Dragon, as he is known in the comics, Ricardo something or other. So again, it's a lot of the same stuff, but with different twists on it. So again, while the last season, that was exactly what was happening. This one, Caden James thinks Oliver killed his son, but he really didn't, and this has all been manipulated. And this was about mid-season. You find this out. This has all been manipulated so that the Dragon can gain control over the city, and and the plot was essentially out Oliver as the Arrow to have him sent to prison and then kill him while he's in prison, so that way the Arrow doesn't become a martyr and someone doesn't rise up to take his spot. It was a way of getting the adversary out of the way without creating new adversaries. Essentially, was his logic. So, like I said, mixed bag for me. Some of it, I think the stuff leading up to the team breaking apart, I thought was interesting. The middle part of the season, once the team broke up, I felt there was a lot of repetition. And then once, not that all was forgiven, but once they realized that if they don't knock off the nonsense, that he's going to win. And once we got to the trial of the Green Arrow, which I think is the best episode of the season, quite frankly, things started to pick up again. And we'll talk a little bit about our thoughts on how the finale is going to go, our guesses at the end of the show. But let me go back to you again, Sean. What were some of let's start with the good here. We'll do good, bad, ugly. What was some of the good here of season 6 for you?
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked, because here in my notes, to kind of keep things clear, I actually did break things down into kind of a classic pro and con column. If I'm to go right down the line and talk about them generally, the entire season, in addition to taking Oliver and the whole dynamic of the show, its whole premise, into uncharted waters, has an extremely well executed running theme of fatherhood and what it means to be a father, the sacrifices of raising a child, taking responsibility for the decisions that you make or don't make. right down the line. Everyone from Oliver and Diggle and Quentin Lance to a really well done two-parter that brings back a version of one of my other DC favorites, Deathstroke, that has gradually, against all odds, won me over. In particular, this season, we see more of a focus placed on Ollie's estranged young son, William, who comes into his care after the death of his mother on Lian Yu. We'll get to my feelings about that. What I like about William, and I know that there's a whole stigma about child actors being just generally terrible, but of all the people on this show who have tried to succinctly and swiftly put Ollie in his fucking place time and again and call him on his bullshit, I don't think anybody has ever done it quite as effectively or as consistently as this kid does. He is just not having his dad's shit. And it's kind of because we're giving the impression he has no reason to. He has no reason to defer and do anything except pretty much tell it to him just like it is. You know, everything from you're being a hypocrite to you don't keep your promises, you know, right down the line. This is the season in which they seemingly have gone all in so far on Olicity after years of, you know, will they, won't they, and false starts and breakups and makeups and so on and so forth. They really seem committed to, no, this is who we're going with, this is who we're sticking with. Zod in Heaven, was there a curious uptick in Batman references? I really liked the nifty one when, if you're paying attention to the whiteboard in the background at one point, when Felicity was trying to run down some potential names for, I think it was either like a business or a name for the team or something like that. You go right down the line, and Oracle is one of the ones that she's crossed off. Which, okay, my being a Batgirl fan, that made me giggle. That got a chuckle out of me. As I said, it's grounded. It's by and large a street level story, because this is, and again, I apologize if it seems forced that I'm making these comparisons, but this is not a case where Tony Stark is Secretary of Defense and, oh, by the way, yeah, don't worry about keeping it keeping it a secret from the world that he also happens to be fucking Iron Man. You know, this is kind of everything closing in on Ollie's secret that he is the Green Arrow, and it's about seeing how he's going to balance all these monumental responsibilities that he's got in front of him. And it also takes a good long look at the idea that his time as the Arrow might, for all he knows, be coming to an end, and how he goes about establishing a succession to make sure that his mission can go on without him, or at least can go on without him being such an active part of it.
Let me jump in here. I'm sorry, finish. Go ahead, finish.
Well, I was going to say, and last but not least, Michael Goddamn Emerson. Michael Goddamn Emerson is one of our big bads.
I want to just jump in here real quick because you had mentioned, and this is probably my favorite thing about this season. Again, we talked about it on the Longbow Hunter show about the idea of, and again, this is why I think the episode entitled Docket Number 11/19/41/73, which was about an episode or two ago. It was the May 3rd episode, and this is, of course, what the entire season's been leading up to. It was the trial of Oliver Queen and the accusations that he is, in fact, the Green Arrow. One of the things I liked about this episode was when the lawyer says to him, "Why don't you just admit you're the Green Arrow, and then we'll bring up the fact that you've saved the city from being blown up half a dozen times." And he says, if I do that, I'm never going to have a life, and those around me won't either. That at some point, I wanted my mission to be over, and I wanted to just live my life. And I'll never be able to do that if I come out and say, I am the Green Arrow. And I thought that was great. I mean, because... when you talk about, just as a comparison, you talk about a character like Batman. Batman, that I'm not aware of, has never talked about giving it up. As a matter of fact, he's quite the opposite. He seems to want to be Batman forever. And a lot of the heroes, just because the idea here is to sell, comic books, television shows, and movies, don't necessarily deal with retirement. If there's a story where they are forced out of the game. Or turned into an alien being and blowing up Coast City or whatever the situations are. I was trying to get a laugh out of you there for that Green Lantern fan.
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to laugh over you. I'm trying to let you kind of get your point out easily. So I was kind of suppressing my laughter.
But they don't. They're usually forced into those things. They aren't. There is no. As was talked about in Civil War, let me say the right movie this time, because the last time I brought this up, I said it was the other one. Fucked it up again. Age of Ultron. There we go. In Age of Ultron, you have a similar thing where, Tony's like, we're doing all of this so that at some point we can end the fight. And Steve reminds him that, the fight ends when it ends, not when you decide it's over. But the point being, I like the idea that this is a character who, in the beginning of the series was very strong about how you failed this city and I have my mission, and and he was very much committed to this. And he's gotten to a point where it's like, no, this has to end at some point. I got to do something else with my life. And I like that. And I like the fact that it was addressed in the way that it was in this episode. And I'm jumping around a lot here, but this very last episode before the season finale, he actually comes out to the FBI agent that he's in fact the Green Arrow. I almost wish this was the last season because I feel like there's a bit of finality here, and while I'm curious as to where they're going to go with season 7 since it has been renewed, I would have liked to have seen them wrap things up with him, sort of clearing himself of this identity and saying, all right, well, whether or not I was truly done with the mission is done with me. But we're not quite there yet. One of the things,
you know what? I was going to say, when you put it that way, when you talk about how this would have made a good final season, it makes me think of Sons of Anarchy. In a way, and how they really started, if you go back far enough, kind of getting the pieces on the board in the right place to kind of get Jax out of Sam Crow a few seasons before it actually ended. And it's kind of what I hope now that this is. How can I put this? I'm hoping that maybe we're looking at a show that's going to end after something like season 9, because it seems like this would be a good way to kind of have a 3-act sort of long final chapter to the entire saga before it starts losing too much steam, so much so that we're just going to be relieved when the end gets here, kind of just going, oh, thank God the show was getting bad. It was past time for it to end. It feels like you could do 2 more seasons after this, and in season 9 have it be Ollie's kind of ultimate denouement, to where his fight truly does come to an end. And that's just kind of my thought on it. I just want to kind of get that in there.
I just don't know where they can go after this. It's, again, we're on the 3rd iteration that I can even remember, and I think if you throw Deathstroke in there, then it's 4 villains who have had total control over this city. This city was beyond. I don't think Gotham was this corrupt. Gotham had some criminal organizations and some bad cops. Every season, everybody's on the take in Star City. It is unbelievable. In every season, we wipe the slate clean, and another guy comes in and instantly takes over the city. Oliver has to start at 4th and 20 every time. So I don't know what you would do for 2 more seasons that isn't the same version of that. Not to mention, we've had Oliver as a solo act. We've had Oliver take on a partner. We have Oliver build up a team. We've had the team implode. And then splinter off. I would assume they're going to go back to having separate teams, but again, what do you do with Oliver and Felicity? Especially since Oliver has said a number of times in this season that it's been said to him that you need to be a father to your son, and being the Green Arrow is counterintuitive to that. They keep building up Felicity as being a little bit more gung-ho about being out there and doing things, almost to the point where what are they going to do, stick her in the outfit? But I'd be curious to see what 3rd, 4th, 5th tier DC villain they're going to pull out of the woodwork to put out there to put in Oliver's way. One of the things I did not like, I'm going to pitch it back to you again. One of the things I did not like about this was the first half of the season, the villain controlling everything. And this is more of a personal issue with me. I wasn't particularly interested in Caden James and his monotone performance. It's just that sort of... They have the villain in The Flash this season is the character, the Thinker. And the Thinker is not exactly given to great waves of drama and overacting. But the actor himself still gives a compelling performance. So there's a difference between understated and monotone, and the guy playing Caden James just gives a monotone performance. Not to mention, I'm a little bored with the idea of the heroes can't do anything right because the villains have thought, 10 moves ahead of them every step of the way. And again, the Flash had the same thing going on, but the Flash did it in a much more interesting way, in my opinion, with the Thinker, who that was his main ability, was to be able to outthink the Flash 10, 20 moves ahead. But that at least gave rise to some very interesting things happening with other characters. I don't think the first half of the season with Caden James did. And the only reason why the second half kind of works for me is at least the guy playing the Dragon, who was, again, Ricardo Alvarez from Oz, is a phenomenal actor and really gives an intense performance. So even if his mission statement and the way he goes about things is about as ordinary as any other villain in these types of shows, he's at least fun to watch. What were some of the things you had issues with? And I know this is your opportunity to talk about Lian Yao.
Oh, God, Lian Yu. Yeah, here's a question that I've come to have about Lian Yu. For a place that was supposedly so deserted and so remote that Oliver Queen was lost there for years, fucking damn, everybody seems to know about it. Like, fucking everybody. But as far as the rest of it, let's just start from the pilot. I get why they executed it the way they did. I I get that the whole reason why the two people who had to be the most important casualties of the splody on Lian Yu was that, number one, Willa Holland requested less screen time. And so they needed a reason to dramatically reduce her role. So they went the fucking soap opera route of putting her into a coma. And also, you killed off William's mother, and so that way we have a reason for William to, be placed into Oliver's custody. Which, hey, lady, by the way, if you're suddenly so okay with Ollie being Daddy Dearest, the fuck was this 8 years ago? Where was it then? Huh? What about the fact that you didn't even want pretty much the love of Oliver's life to know that he had a kid? Awfully convenient, don't you think? It was a disappointing payoff to spend the whole off season wondering, what has Oliver? Who has Oliver lost now? Who died on Lian Yu? Because they said, oh, not everybody survived.
By the way, have you seen Avengers yet?
No, shut up.
Just drawing a parallel. Just drawing a parallel.
And I'm just saying, shut up.
Yes, sir.
You have the leads on the series and the showrunners all teasing this all throughout the off season, and lo and behold, it's not really anybody important. The one main character is just going to be in a coma for about a fourth of the season, and then for a requisite holiday miracle, she comes out of the coma complete with Willa Holland practically winking at the camera the entire episode. Just being little kitty gives no fucks. And the only one who we actually know for a fact is for really real's dead. Is someone that we have spent a grand total of maybe about an hour of collective screen time with over the course of 5 seasons. Who is a total absentee presence on the show. So there's the matter of that little disappointment. There's the fucking lame ass, and again, we're getting back into soap opera territory here, vigilante reveal. I mean, was it some other obscure DC hero that we're going to be excited to see worked into the continuity? And possibly, I don't know, maybe it'll be somebody they can spin off onto Legends of Tomorrow or The Flash, or give their own series. Maybe they'll pop up on Black Lightning. Ooh, questions. Oh, nope. It's another character that got blasted in the head, miraculously healed, and he's a superhero now. Doopy-doo. It's Dinah's ex-lover / cop partner. He got shot in the head. He got magic Wolverine / Deadpool powers from the particle accelerator explosion. He healed and became vigilante. Derpy-der. Not completely sure how I feel about Diggle's arc of self-doubt that he goes through. He is wounded pretty seriously in the course of the battle at the end of season 5. Suffers some chronic nerve damage in his hand that leaves the old soldier unable to shoot effectively. And yet, despite all of this, Oliver pegs him as being his successor as Green Arrow, and he has to hide this from everybody because keeping secrets on this team always works so well. Nothing ever gets found out. Nothing ever comes back to bite anybody. He develops a drug addiction because somebody comes up with a remedy that will allow him to at least fire a crossbow, if not actually a proper bow. This in no way whatsoever backfires. But the reason why I don't buy it and why I kind of bang my head against the wall is here's the guy who throughout every single season has busted a foot off in Oliver's ass time and time again for lying to everybody, and Oliver's constant lies getting everybody into trouble. So I'm not entirely sure that I'm buying it. Sorry, not sure if want. There's the minor question of asking just how the hell do some of these people earn livings?
Well, for a while they were all working for the mayor.
Yes, some of them I get. Some of them, okay, we have an answer. Renee, I get it. Quentin, I get it. Felicity, I kind of get it, although even she kind of starts to point out this gaping plot hole. But
I have less problem with the Arrowcast and how the hell do they eat than I do with the Flash. They all at least Felicity had the money from the buyout of Palmer Tech, and then says, "Hey, I'm running out of money. I'm going to start a new business with what's his face, Mr. Terrific." And then everybody else is either a cop or works for Oliver and the mayor's office. Well, how the fuck do Killer Frost and Vibe make any money working for a defunct lab in Star City?
I kind of wonder the same thing about Dinah. Oh wait, remind me, did she? This is me having trouble keeping track of you. Did she get reinstated to Star City PD?
She wasn't the captain anymore, but I could have sworn she was still a cop. But then again, I may have lost track of that particular thread when she was removed from the captaincy. But at least for look, I have to assume most of these people are not like the rest of us and actually have a savings account.
I mean, well, yeah, but Mark, come on, they're burning through a lot of takeout.
Fair enough. I don't know how. The worst one is John. He hasn't had a job. Since the first season. He was Oliver's bodyguard. That gig has since dried up.
And given his past history, it's unlikely he's exactly earning a military pension at this point.
Yeah, he only started working for Argus 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, Lila must be bringing home some serious bacon.
Who's watching their kid?
There's that too. But that's not exactly the worst of the plot holes. And the worst of it is the fact that they've now begun to really lampshade the fact that the patience is running out with Oliver, especially when it comes to absolutely everything is about me.
Yeah.
Everything must be about me. Everything must be my fault.
Oh.
Everybody's problems can be swiftly turned to my problems.
Oh, God. The episode where he's like, I have to return the mission to where I'm working by myself. And, and the only thing that was even halfway decent about that was at least he was on drugs at the time.
And it's getting to the point where if the writers are so willing to have the characters point out that Oliver simply doesn't learn, that he has not had enough tragedy, enough loss in his life because of his dishonesty, his lack of trust, his self-centeredness. It's like it's never enough for him to get the message about this stuff. And if the writers are conscious enough to point this out, why not have the characters actually try to work to bring it to a boiling point?
Well, you don't think that's exactly what happened with him? You know, he goes after Renee not once but twice. And Renee finally says, "Fuck you," and the horse you rode in on, which causes then Dinah and Curtis to walk out. I mean, I feel like it, you know, and then it was an episode or two later, John finally walks out on him and says, you know, you've been a terrible leader this past year, and I need to go do something else with my life. So I feel like it did get brought to a boiling point.
It did, but everybody is so constantly willing to forgive this shit and always swear up and down, okay, but this is the last time. From now on, we're all going to be honest and have no more secrets. Meanwhile, Diggle isn't telling anybody he's a junkie, even when the team is going after his dealer. And Dinah isn't pointing it out that her former fuck buddy is vigilante. So on and so on and fucking so on. I mean, I'm not one to talk about kind of sticking my fingers in the toaster repeatedly and being shocked when I get electrocuted and burned. But people have died. Lives have been irrevocably changed. You know, people have miraculously come back from the dead, and they've just kind of gambled on that always being an option sometimes too. But it's getting to the point where it's turning to self-parody. And on a show like this, that's when it starts becoming tiresome. If you're not overtly trying to make it a Deadpool-ish form of fourth wall breaking comedy.
You know, when you talk about self-parodying, and then I want to shift gears here after this, but I think the worst offender of the self-parodying aspect of this show is Laurel Lance. Okay, the Black Siren.
Fucking Laurel.
Okay, because that's the writers going, well, we had this high-pitched moment, this really dramatic moment when Damien Dark kills her. And they can't, and they go, yeah, but she's a main cast member, and I guess people like her, so we'll find a way to bring her back. Okay, here's her doppelganger from another Earth. And then, and while it's on the one hand, it's plausible that this character would be this crazy and this dumb, you know, where Quentin is trying to bring the good out of her so that he has some semblance of his daughter back. On the other hand, yes, I understand it's your daughter from another Earth, but it's not really your daughter. and at least they didn't, you know, at least I felt like they treated the character the way I think a person like that would really be. You know, where she's just taken the guy kind of for a ride, and she really, and then up until one of the last episodes, she was actually working for the main bad guy. Otherwise, it would have been utterly intolerable. It's just, I mean, this is probably. I mean, as much as you had a problem with it, you know, with the entire island blows up and miraculously only kills one person. This was the thing that I struggled with all season, was just the fact that there's so much attention on this one character who at this point is only on the show because they didn't want to write the actress out.
Which, yeah, and I mean that's a shame because to be perfectly honest, the other Black Canary, the second Black Canary, now White Canary, Katie Lotz, I actually really like her. One, I think she's quite an accomplished actress, and second, I've always been very intrigued by the fact that, and if you were to go hit up YouTube, you would find footage that actually proves this. She's very much athletic enough to do most of her own stunts on these shows. I mean, even so much so that, you know, it doesn't just look like she was able to keep up with Stephen Amell, who himself can handle virtually all of the physicality. So much so that he even did a run through on American Ninja Warrior of the course at one point, including the infamous salmon ladder. Katie, Katie Cassidy, on the other hand, she was a shrew when the show started. She was vapid, unlovable. You know, her best moments were playing an alcoholic frost bitch. Well, because that seemed to be the only personality she could really glom onto. She was never really convincing to me as Black Canary, in no small part because, and yes, I know books is for burning, but bear with me here. In the comics, the whole thing is Oliver is not an ace fighter. Quite the contrary. Ollie's mouth gets him into trouble, and quite a few times Black Canary has to pull his ass out of the fire because he's getting his ass royally kicked. I would have hoped that when it came to bringing that character to live action, they would have gone with somebody who, even though this is a much more combat-ready Oliver Queen, would have been somebody who could have kept pace with him. But instead, what we got was the more capable one. We shunted off to Legends of Tomorrow, and instead we subbed in her sister, who, you know, has to be taught the basics of throwing a damn punch so she doesn't break her fucking wrist every time.
Yeah, I always thought that was a really unbelievable arc, that this lawyer, you know, this prissy lawyer was suddenly going to pick up nunchucks and, you know, and start beating people over the head. You know, that's why when she died, I was like, okay, I'm good with this. She should have died.
Yeah.
And she should have died by stray bullet, let alone Damien Dark.
Yeah. And I mean, Black Canary is a storied DC character, and it's one that I think deserves better than what we've gotten so far in this series. It's weird. It's very hit and miss how they do this. It's like, I make no bones about the fact that I have not been entirely the biggest fan of what they did with Deathstroke. But I kind of came to accept it. Black Canary is such an outstanding fighter and such a huge part of Oliver Queen's life. It feels like the ball has been thoroughly dropped, and I would almost rather just see Katie Cassidy go away entirely than see Laurel Lance kind of played by her any further.
Yeah, I'd be fine if she died again.
I could live with it. Yeah.
So look, we're running on an hour here. We're going to get to predictions. That's the word I couldn't remember before. Mm-hmm. You know, it gets to be a certain time at night, and I lose English. But we're going to make some predictions about where the season finale is going to go. Again, they have this drive that they stole off of the Dragon. And allegedly it had all of this information on it. I don't think they were able to get to it. They had to pull it out before the split team's bunker was blown to smithereens. They are out of options. They are out of time. They are held up at Argus. No one knows what to do next. And Ollie says, well, we need a new ally in this. We need to think of something he hasn't thought of yet. And so he goes to the FBI and he says, I'm the Green Arrow. And she says, the truth shall set you free. And there's one other thing I need. And we don't know what that thing is. So that's as good a place as any. How do you see the season finale playing out? And what is the second thing the FBI agent's going to ask of him?
Oh, man. And I just watched the very last couple episodes today, and that's really kind of what I'm still debating. Okay, what were the questions again? One more time. I'm sorry.
What is the second thing she's asking of him? And it was a general, how do you think it's going to end?
God, I hate to be uninteresting, but I really have no idea whatsoever.
I gotta think she's going to say, retire. I'll help you, and if anyone ever wears that hood again, I'm arresting you. End of line.
That seems reasonable, but I also don't think they're quite ready to kind of go that route. I think it would be interesting if they would, because it would eventually build up to, at some point Oliver is going to put that hood back on.
Well, let me throw this. Let me throw this in the bed with Madonna and see if she sleeps with it, as a friend of mine used to say. Mm. What if half of next season there's a guy? Oliver agrees to never put on the green arrow, the hood again, and swears nobody else will either. He will cop to that. He will say, "I will not give this hood to anyone else. I will close down the vigilante shop." And she says, "Fine." And they capture the dragon, and he'll die. He'll probably, get killed like everybody else does in this show, only to show up on Legends of Tomorrow. Anywho, so. The half of next season is him, just trying to move on with his life, figure out what he's no longer the mayor. He's, or maybe he is, because apparently the guy that's currently the mayor, Quentin, is not coming back. So he's probably going to buy it in this episode as well. So maybe he gets reinstated as mayor and he focuses on that, and we're done being vigilantes, but there's somebody out there running around claiming to be the Green Arrow. And now he's getting shit from the FBI again, because I thought you said you were done with this. And he's like, but it's not me this time, for reals even. And a lot of the first half of the season is dealing with, well, who is this guy running around if it isn't you? And what can he do to stop it if he's not allowed to go out there and be a vigilante in the first place? And him having to sort of rely on Black Canary, Mr. Terrific, and Wild Dog, or whoever else they're going to bring on. I wish they'd bring Ragman back. I like that character.
Right?
Like, oh, look, a superhero with superpowers. Awesome. So I'll be curious to see who they write into the show. But it'd be interesting to see him handcuffed by his own promise, but forced to have to do something and rely on others, because his fat's in the fryer if they decide to go after him because somebody else is wearing the hood. That's my idea, at least.
That sounds pretty thorough, and definitely much more so than I've really thought through this. And I hope that the next couple seasons, again, continue to build on this idea of we need a contingency plan, because this is now how many times it's nearly come to ruin because we've been reminded that Oliver can't do this all by himself. What does Star City do without him? Will we ever be able to kind of keep this war up without him leading the charge? I know that I've heard that Colton Haynes is supposed to be back as a season regular, as Roy Harper again.
Which means we're going to get more League of Assassins nonsense.
Yeah, maybe, possibly. I kind of hope not, because I feel like that's pretty well resolved. But then again, it's the League of Assassins. How could it ever really be completely? I don't know. Where do you see next season going?
Well, I was thinking about what off-brand third-tier character have they not introduced into this show that they could bring out? I mean, They've got Constantine now. They drug up the actor who played Constantine on the network show, and they threw him onto the team for the next season of Legends of Tomorrow. They picked up Kid Flash. They've gotten rid of Firestorm. So I'm trying to think. I don't think anybody from any of the other shows is suddenly going to reappear in Star City. And so they have to come up with some new people. I'm struggle to think of who they could come up with as a villain at this point. But then again, I'm not as familiar with the DC characters as I am Marvel. It's a little bit easier for me to think about, what Marvel characters are out there that they could throw into a movie or a TV show. They're using Dr. Fate right now on Krypton, so I doubt they'll use him.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think, because they burned through so many of them at this point. Floyd Lawton is basically presumed dead. I mean, no chance we're getting Solomon Grundy at any point because they already basically used him as a ha-ha Easter egg reference.
Well, not only that, but I don't think they're going to use anything from... I can't imagine they're going to use anything from Gotham. And Solomon and Butch is now Solomon Grundy on Gotham.
Oh, is he? I don't follow that shit show, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah. So I mean, I was thinking maybe it'd be fun if they brought in the Penguin as another crime boss, but again, Gotham.
Yeah, well, Gotham, and also he's kind of first and foremost a Batman villain.
Yeah, so is Ra's al Ghul.
We let's not speak of that, shall we? Well, congrats, guys. You fucking ruined Deathstroke. He would have been a great ace to have in the hole. You can't do Amanda Waller. You've done that.
Yeah, and killed her. So I'm on Comic Vine right now, and it says the greatest villains of the Green Arrow family. Number 1 is Count Vertigo.
Who they've done already. To death.
Oh, who was Count Vertigo?
He was a drug dealer.
Oh, okay, Vertigo.
Yeah.
Got it. Now making the connection. We've already done Malcolm Merlin, speaking of which, to death. Clock King.
Did him already.
Onomatopoeia.
Haven't done him yet, but goddamn, that's a goofy one.
Constantine Draken.
Not as familiar with that one, but I guess it's an option.
Brick. I don't know if they've actually done him already. We've already done Cupid. There's a character in the New 52 called Limelight. Camarrouge, Everyman, Silver Monkey, Isabel Rochev, Hatchet, China White, which they've done, the Star City Slayer, Red Dart, Bullseye. Yeah. Okay. We're going to need to start digging into some other characters here. Maybe they'll do the ghost character. The, oh god, what the hell is his name? Gentleman Ghost. There we go. That's my vote.
That one I'm faintly familiar with. I'm trying to remember if they've done him yet or not. I don't think they have. I feel like they haven't done him yet.
No, I don't believe so.
I mean...
You know what? Fuck
I don't know.
Let's just go. Let's just go into outer space and let's bring on Darkseid.
I feel like that would be such a step backward, especially since there's no way that the CW has the budget to do Darkseid properly, the way he should be done in all his glory.
I expected you honestly to just hang up the phone.
No, I'm being that's the old Sean. I'm not that reactionary, except on a very precious few topics. You are not getting a bat credit card moment out of me for that.
Here we go. All right, I'm gonna pitch this. I'm gonna pitch this as next year's villain. Okay, the Royal Flush Gang.
They did them already.
Are you shitting me? On Arrow?
I believe either first or second season.
Ugh, damn it.
In fact, I'm pretty sure first season. Yeah, and it was not done well.
All right, I give up. So let's just go to final words, burning desires, whatever you got for me. Finish us off here.
Another season with a step in the right direction. They've taken things back to what they know works. But it's clear that change is coming because you have series regulars who are wanting less screen time or wanting to step away from the show a little bit, especially Katie Cassidy and Willa Holland in particular. You've already established that Team Arrow is once more in flux. You're flat out running out of places to go with this. It's been an outstanding standard bearer for the DC universe on the CW, but the next couple seasons, it's time to play whatever trump cards you might have in the deck as far as big bads go, and I would say end it by season 9. And be ready to possibly say goodbye to some more main characters along the way. Because, at some point, who knows if Diggle is going to make it to the end of this. How many more times can Speedy keep cheating death? You don't want death to kind of become a gimmick.
Yeah. 7 villains Arrow should use. Number 7, Deacon Blackfire. Number 6, Komodo. Number 5, Onomatopoeia. Number 4, the Ninth Circle. Number 3, Constantine Draken. I have to look that guy up. Lady Shiva and the League of Shadows, which I think they just
Lady
introduced.
Shiva. Okay, that could be a good one. I hadn't thought of that.
And number 1, the Ravager. With Slade's family just getting a small arc in the early part of Season 6, the time will soon be right for another Wilson to go to war with Oliver. I know the showrunner said that Isabel was their version of the Ravager all the way back in Season 2, but I don't recall her ever being called that, etc., etc., etc. So, all right, those are some ideas. With that said, yeah, I'm anxious to see how it's going to go. Like I said, this is my least favorite of all those CW shows. My first favorite is Legends of Tomorrow, then Supergirl, then The Flash, then Black Lightning, and then this one. And this one's like deep last. I watch it because, again, they eventually get to a crossover, and I don't want to not know what's going on. And occasionally, like I said, there's some high points in the show that garner my interest, but a lot of it is a little too grim. It's a lot of I'm getting tired of angsty Oliver, and these last couple of episodes where since the one where he was on Vertigo and he was deciding to go it alone, he's been a little bit better. They're writing him as he's trying to learn from his mistakes and not drive the team away for a third time, but. You're right. Next season, this has to be different. He has to be dealing with something else internally because we can't keep. We need a villain who hasn't taken control over the city by episode 1, and we need Oliver to be dealing with some new stuff. That's all I ask. I'd like them to. I'd actually like to see Felicity take up a mantle of her own. And start. Maybe again.
Well, she's Overwatch though.
She is, but again, they started toying with this idea of her wanting to get more, in the middle of things. So I don't know what character they could base this off of, but I'd like to see her do kind of an Iron Man thing where she builds herself kind of a high tech suit and goes out into it alone, without Oliver even knowing about it, and let that be one of the arcs that happens. Is her saying, "I got a taste for the field." And I want more, and I know that I can't fight. So what I lack in my physical ability, I'll make up for in technology and brains. And him going, "Are you mad, woman?" That sort of thing.
No, that sounds good. That sounds reasonable, and I'm at kind of a loss for anything else to add as far as the future of the show, except for, guys, I think your time is running out.
Yeah, you keep saying season 9. I'm going, how about season 7? let's let this be the last season. All right. With that said, Sean, any plugs? Anything you're working on these days?
The I got a couple things that I'm working on, but I kind of want to start avoiding the mistake of talking something up too much and then never following through on it. So I'll just say that the best place to find out what I'm up to is go to twitter.com/ComerCodex, in particular, because that's where you will find most of the updates for what I'm going to be playing on my stream on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/ComerCodex. Lately, we've been playing Grim Fandango Remastered, a whole lot of Overwatch, and this one I can throw out there. I have been invited to a competitive Dead by Daylight team. So you can tune in fairly often and see me try to kind of practice up to where I can actually stand a chance at a competitive level against some of the best killers in the world.
All right. As I said before, I've said it a couple of times now in this show. Actually misspoke a little bit. The edited version of our Longbow Hunter source material show is actually up now in the archives, ready for you to listen to. What we did this past week was the raw audio of Deadpool versus X-Force, which the edited show will be on the Radulich Broadcasting Network Monday. This coming Monday, obviously to synchronize with the Damn You Hollywood Deadpool 2 review. Meanwhile, back over here, tomorrow on the Radulich Broadcasting Network is our review of Dimmu Borgir, their new album, and next week we'll have, as I said before, Deadpool versus X-Force. We'll have our review of Deadpool 2 and our Metal Hammer of Doom review of Five Finger Death Punch. For those of you just to tune into the Radulich Broadcasting Network just to hear Sean, you only care about Sean. Screw me. You only want Sean. He will be... The next On Trial is June 5th, a couple of days after my birthday. We'll be doing the 1994, we're calling it On Trial Civil Court Edition, Forrest Gump versus The Shawshank Redemption, Who Should Have Won the Oscar? I will be arguing in favor of Forrest Gump, and Sean will be arguing in favor of The Shawshank Redemption. And I think that's all we got Sean for in the month of June, unless he starts watching Krypton all of a sudden.
Yeah, let's. I will refer to my thoughts on Gotham.
Fair enough. Understood, sir. Understood. All right. With that said, this has been TV Party Tonight. For Sean Comer, I'm your mandated reporter, Mr. Mark Radulich. Thank you for tuning in. Be well, be safe, and behave.